Hey, everybody. Hopefully, you had a great Thanksgiving break. So, what we started today was Investigation 7. So, your only assignment for today is to answer the focus question. How do traits pass from parents to offspring? Keep in mind, the only three incorrect answers are leaving it blank, I don't know, /IDK, I don't care, IDC. So, the only assignment is to fill that out. So, we started today by looking at, well, how do plants reproduce?
Sexual reproduction in plants. In this module, you will learn how sexual reproduction takes place in flowering plants. It is spring season. Flowers are blooming on the trees. It is indeed a beautiful sight. Flowers attract all of us. They are the most beautiful part of the plant, isn't it? You already know that flowers are not present only to add beauty to the plant. They are in fact the reproductive part of the plant. In the flower, stamen is the male reproductive part, while carpel is the female reproductive part. Some flowers contain both male and female reproductive parts. Such flowers are called bisexual flowers. For example, pea, China rose, etc. On the other hand, some flowers possess either the male or the female reproductive parts. Such flowers are called unisexual flowers. For example, corn, cucumber, etc. Now let us know about the different parts that make up a stamen and a carpel. A stamen is made of two main parts, anther and filament. The anther produces pollen grains. It is the pollen grain that contains the male gametes. A carpel, on the other hand, is made up of three parts. The terminal part is called the stigma. The middle elongated part is the style, and the swollen bottom part is the ovary. Inside the ovary, ovules are present. It is the ovule that has the female gamete called the egg cell. For sexual reproduction to take place, a male gamete is to be fused with the female gamete, thereby forming a zygote. Now for that, the male gametes have to reach the female gametes. For this, first a pollen grain carrying the male gametes is transferred from the stamen of a flower to the stigma of the same or the other flower. Such transfer of pollen grains is known as pollination. If the pollen grain of a flower lands on the stigma of the same flower, it is called self-pollination. But if the pollen grain of a flower lands on the stigma of another flower of the same or another plant of the same type, it is called cross-pollination. Pollination occurs with the help of different agents like wind, water, or animals. Once a pollen grain reaches the stigma of a suitable flower, a tube grows from the pollen grain. This tube travels through the style and reaches the ovary. The male gamete from the pollen travels in this tube and reaches to the female gamete present in the ovule of the ovary. After that, the male and the female gamete fuse together to form the zygote. This process of fusion of male and female gametes is called fertilization. The zygote formed after the fertilization then divides several times to form an embryo inside the ovule. The ovule develops a tough coat and changes to a seed. The ovary, on the other hand, ripens and forms a fruit around the seed. At this time, the other parts of the flower, like the sepals and petals, fall off. So, a seed present inside a fruit contains an embryo, which is...
So inside of the seed is the embryo that then goes to become the future plant. All right. So we started with Investigation 7. We looked at inherit traits. So inherited traits.
We're going to use puppies to explore the variation of traits in plants and animals. Welcome to Labracazam, where we make science make sense.
Dr. Jeff, speaking of making sense, how do we explain this one?
Yeah, the mom doesn't look like all the other puppies.
The reason that some of these puppies don't look like their mom and dad is because different traits can be inherited or passed down from the parents to the puppies. Traits are things like height, eye color, and hair color, or in the case of these puppies, things like fur color. Most traits are inherited from parents.
Oh, I see, which is why most of them are brown or have brown in them, like their mom.
Exactly. What other traits do these puppies share with their mom or their dad?
Well, they all have fur and floppy ears.
This one has a long tail, and this one has a short one.
Very good. While most traits are passed down from parents, different individuals can have different traits.
Like this one is almost all black.
That's right. Are there any other differences you can observe?
This puppy is bigger than those puppies, and this one has a longer snout than these two.
That's right. Some of these traits came from their dad, and other ones came from their mom. Traits can also come from grandparents or great-grandparents. Hey, kids, you want to...
So, in the case of the dogs, the traits were like the fur color, nose, tail length, etc. So, for reviewing sexual and asexual reproduction, we just watched a video that explained that plants reproduce from sexual reproduction, meaning they have a sperm and an egg that have to be infused to create offspring. Is the dividing of a paramecium or bacterium into two cells an example of sexual reproduction or asexual reproduction? Well, that is an example of asexual reproduction because there does not need to be a sperm or an egg present for it to reproduce. Basically, they just get large enough until they split in half. And the difference is sexual reproduction requires a sperm and an egg, whereas asexual does not. So like we talked about at the beginning, on page 1 in your binder online, the only thing for today you got to answer is the focus question: how do traits pass from parents to offspring? So for mammals, including human, they reproduce sexually. Parents pass off their characteristics to their offspring. So what about your classmates? Do they have any specific characteristics? How are they similar? How are they different? So we all have things in common like legs, arms, and eyes. Those are called features. How those things differ from one another, arm length, eye color, are called traits. All the different traits of a feature describe the variation of that feature. So we looked at some of the traits that we have, including hair color, eye color, height, dimples, widow's peak, if your pinkies, if you line them up, if they can touch, if they're crooked, a hitchhiker thumb. We shared that with our classmates today during the live session. So again, all you need to do today for today's online virtual learning is answering our focus question in the before box. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.